My guest on this week's episode of Suds Search is Mark Traphagen, Vice President of Product Marketing and Training at seoClarity. Mark is an indispensable member of the SEO community. He's ubiquitous on the conference circuit, a prolific blogger, vlogger, educator, and thought leader. A very short list of the conferences you may have heard Mark present at includes Pubcon, State of Search, MozCon, and all the different SMX events. He is a frequent columnist at Search Engine Journal and on the seoClarity company blog. Where I think his talents shine brightest are on video series and webinars. Earlier this year, Mark put on a webinar titled The State of the Enterprise SEO Industry. I'm going to spend a lot of our conversation talking about the findings from that webinar. For years, he and Eric Enge co-hosted the terribly impressive and often hilariously funny web series, Here's Why. I'm going to ask Mark about the video series. Between when I visited with Mark and this episode aired, Mark and Eric brought the band back together for a great episode about the power of user intent. There aren't many professionals like Mark Traphagen. He is considered by many of his peers one of the smartest and kindest professionals working in digital marketing. That was on display when my 4-year-old son decided to make a cameo appearance during our discussion. Join me for a conversation with Mark Traphagen. We'll talk about core web vitals, SERP feature changes, a nuanced view of rank tracking seoClarity calls visibility share, and we'll spend a little time talking about lavender martinis. Mark Traphagen, welcome to Suds Search. How you doing?
Mark Beelan, I am doing excellent, other than the fact that I don't get to see you guys in Chicago these days. Some kind of travel restrictions or something.
Yeah, something's been going on. Yeah. So to fill the audience in, we had dinner in Chicago. seoClarity is based there. Search Lab is based there. So I thought we would be hanging out all year. And then after COVID, I thought we'd have to put off this Suds Search interview for a couple months, maybe. Then you'd be back here.
Yeah, the only good thing about it is that was probably one of the best steak dinners I've ever had anywhere. And I've had a whole year to save up to pay you back for it.
That was really good, and I've got some pictures of it, so I'll send them your way just so you can remember it.
Oh, sweet!
Perfectly. So
good memories,
and good company too. So I wanted to ask you a few questions about a webinar you did recently. It was on the state of enterprise SEO. Extremely well done. Everything that you guys are doing at seoClarity is, in terms of these webinars, especially, is really, really good. And I kind of wanted to go through it point by point with you if you're up for it. So one of the things that you've been talking about on not just this webinar, but others as well is SERP feature changes. You've used the phrase, this isn't your parents' SERP anymore. Things like ads, featured snippets, people also ask boxes. These are things I think most SEOs have gotten some familiarity with. One of the things I was surprised in your presentation, you said that there were over 1,200 unique features in the SERP. Now that's needs a little bit of explaining. I think 200 were found in more than 0.2% of searches, but even 200 search features is more than I could even come close to naming off the top of my head. What's going on here?
We've actually, by the way, since we recorded that, we've actually now tracked over 1,500.
Wow, 1,500. Yeah, just different SERP features.
I'll explain what we mean.
Yeah, but what's going on with all these SERP features? What do you make of it?
First of all, we give that figure, 1,200, 1,500 individual SERP features. We're talking about every tiny little different change that can happen that takes a search result beyond what we think of as the traditional, blue link with the 2-line description that we used to see back in the beginning days of Google. So think in terms of all kinds of rich results, review stars, site links, even the smallest expansions. So a great many of these only show up in highly specialized queries or certain types of results, or depending on the structured data of the site, all these types of things. But still, they all take us outside of the traditional search results. And they take up space on the page, which is one of the things we were most interested in when we developed our visibility share product at seoClarity, was to be able to give a more realistic view of your position in the search results. Because just saying like I'm in position 3 doesn't mean as much anymore if there's other things big and small that are pushing you further down. So that, aside from, there's a lot of other things you can talk about with search features, but from a pure SEO ranking, traditional ranking perspective, what we were interested in, our clients were interested in first was just real estate space. Like we all know, the further you're down the page, the harder it is to get a click. And now those search features are literally taking up space that used to be ours to claim.
So interesting. And it dovetails into what you mentioned about you guys have this term visibility share at seoClarity. We have a real problem now about tracking rankings. The old school way of doing this, if you've been doing SEO a long time, is to think of a 10 blue links world, and you're ranking number one. That means you win. You're the best. If you're ranking number three, you're getting there. You're okay. This doesn't work anymore, does it, Mark? I mean, what do you think people should be doing instead? And maybe tell our audience a little bit about that visibility share from seoClarity.
Sure. So when we talk in terms of where we really, well, let me back up. Where we first saw the effect that what we call visibility share has on organic search was when we began to do more careful analysis of click-through results. And there's a lot of click-through result research that people are still using and quoting that goes back years. It was based on, again, traditional 10 blue links with 2-line meta descriptions. And you could say, if you're position 1, you're going to get X% of the clicks, position 2, a little bit less, position 3, and so on down the page. We were finding that those had no correlation anymore to reality, simply because with search features, what really matters is your visibility. First of all, do you have above the fold visibility? That's the most fundamental. So depending on the device that the user's on, do they even see your results without scrolling? Do they have to take a physical effort, in other words, to even see you? And then second, even then, if there are search features, it can be big ones like an answer box or a featured snippet, or an image carousel, or it can be even smaller things like an expanded site description, expanded site links, these types of things. All of those take up vertical space on the page and mean the distance to, if you're second, third, sixth, seventh, 10th on the page, the distance to where somebody even sees you to click on you becomes greater. So we began to analyze and measure click-through rate by search visibility and distance from the top of the page rather than just the traditional ranking, and came up with our visibility share metric that we think gives a truer picture of where you are for any given keyword on the page. That's the fundamental explanation. Yeah.
So how is it measured? So if I have a visibility share, is it you're 1, you're 5, or what is the actual metric? How does it work?
Well, we have a number of different metrics that we provide in our visibility share product. Depending on what you want to look at, you can see pixel depth, the literal number of pixels that your result is from the top of the page, several different things. But our visibility share proprietary metric is a calculation based on that physical distance from the top of the page, first of all, but also what is above you, what's appearing above you, because we have accumulated, huge database of statistics on how the mix of particular features that are above you on the results affect the click-through rate. So we express it as a percentage. And if you get 100%, that means you're at the absolute top of the page. Now, almost nobody actually gets 100% because 100%, like there's a little bit always taken up by, those little lines, even like Google says, so many results for this query, things like that. Sometimes they put other things in there. So that's already taking up a little bit of space. But theoretically, 100% means you're, nothing's above you. So, and the score is, so it's a composite again of your position, your actual position on the page, along with search volume and click-through rate estimations. So it's kind of an overall composite score of like, this is relative to your competition, this is how visible you are for this query.
That's very interesting. And it's a problem for us digital marketers to explain this to our clients too. So it's a very useful tool, I think, for the end user. Another thing.
Yeah, we've gotten a lot of great response to it from our clients because it's gotten them out of that traditional ranking thinking. It's kind of broken that for them, and making them look a little more carefully at the SERPs and where there might be opportunities for them to either build out more rich results or maybe try to capture a featured snippet. These kinds of strategies become more important when you realize the visibility that they're taking away from you.
You can see how you could take action with that information. So very good. Another thing from the webinar, Google's shift to focusing on intent. You mentioned BERT in this. It's now been applied to nearly 100% of searches, or maybe by the time this airs, 100% of searches. You've described this as natural language processing on steroids. This is all super interesting to me, but it's also somewhat esoteric, it's a little bit intimidating, I think, for some people. And I fear that whenever I mention NLP, I lose half my audience, or at least half of them go to the fridge to refresh their beer. Can you help put this on the ground level a little bit? What could people who begin to understand this information do to actually improve their campaigns or their campaigns of their clients?
So the important thing I think about things like any kind of NLP processing that Google or other search engines is doing, any kind of language processing, is it's fun to understand it more on the theoretical level and dive in deep and see the technology and what they might be doing with it. But fundamentally, all you need to think about is Google is just getting better at being your user. It's still, it's why we didn't coin the term, but at seoClarity, we always talk with our clients not about search engine optimization, but search experience optimization. And you got to be thinking in terms of that search experience for the user, because that's what Google is trying to match with things like BERT. So as they get better at it, it simply means the better you're creating content, creating and optimizing your content, your pages for your target audience, for your real users, the more you ought to be rewarded by Google. So we advise people not to, again, interesting on an academic level, to understand things like BERT or natural language processing. What can help is, again, I'm going to plug just a little bit. If your tools that you're using are able to, in some sense, back engineer that. And we're very excited about our recent innovations in our Content Fusion engine, which we've incorporated now into our Topic Explorer keyword research product, which we can now identify for billions of keywords, what we call intent similarity. So this can identify terms, phrases, keywords that your audience are using to search for what you are promoting, that would never come up in traditional research, but they're being used. And we know Google is using this same kind of semantic relationships to look at things. So we think it's a more useful way to look at and expand keyword research, expand your topics, expand your content.
No, I think it's really interesting. It's worth pointing out why the information from this webinar is so interesting to somebody like me. We have, I don't know, around roughly 100 clients at Search Lab. That's a good amount of data to go through. How much data are you looking at seoClarity before you come up with these webinars? It's some of these things are almost over the top.
Yeah, I'm not good at remembering exact numbers. Lots.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. It's actually 13.7 lots, Mark, to tell you. No, I mean a ton. One of the things that Mittal Gandhi, our founder, has invested in over the years is just massive data capabilities and acquisition. To be able to parse these things. We've invested a lot in what people put out the general rubric of artificial intelligence. Simply again because as a search engine platform tool, our job, what we do exist to is basically, let's put it crudely, to back engineer Google to the best of our abilities. And so we have to try to match their processes as much as we can. And so we're trying to match and learn to do the same kind of high-level machine learning, artificial intelligence processing of data to provide these insights that will match up well with what Google is able to see and find these days. But yeah, lots and lots and lots of data. We are just moving now. I said billions of keywords earlier, and that's the direction we're moving. We've always said in our promotional material that our research grid has access to over 300 million keywords, but with technology and access that we're in the process of building in now, we will very soon literally have access to billions of keywords to process data for our clients.
It's amazing. And I like some of the things you've been able to do to slice and dice the data too. So there's a section in your speech where you talk about answer boxes have gone wild, and the prevalence of these on the SERPs has increased a lot. But that's interesting in and of itself. But then you start to slice and dice it. It impacts healthcare more than it impacts home services or by industry. That level of data is really interesting to me. You guys are able to really segment the data into the verticals, huh?
Yeah, that's something that we've spent a lot of time on. First of all, that what you just mentioned is a little bit embarrassing. This is, when as soon as you hit publish on something, Google
Right,
changes
right,
it,
right.
Um, so you may have seen
Yes.
the news, and we've tracked this as well. We've confirmed it that, featured snippets, answer boxes have drastically
Right.
reduced in recent
Yep.
months. Some people saying at historic levels. That's happened before, and a lot of times they come back. Google experiments and turns with them. So they're volatile for
Mhm.
sure, but still a force to be reckoned with. But that aside, um, I'm like, what was your
Well,
second
just
part of
how
your
you're
question
able
was
to
what?
look into different industries, different segments
Yeah,
of it, I thought was
yeah.
really interesting.
So this is where we, again, employing the machine learning to look at actual, trillions and trillions of actual search results and dig down into the content itself,
Mhm.
go to the pages. And so we were able to parse out not only by industry, so we can get you down to, very specific industry categories, but also intent. So we parse by the big intents, information, transactional, local, et cetera. So trying to, we can segment in all those ways. So you're looking at not just a general keyword and its possible results, but is this applicable to my industry? And the competitors that are there, and also is it, how does it shape up in comparatively in my industry, but also by intent and helping you create content for different user intents.
All right. Well, very good. Sorry, my son has come in the room, so he might want to say hi. Do you want to say hi to Mark Traphagen? Yeah.
Hey,
Sorry. There we go. Say hi. Hi. This
uh,
is Mark as well.
cool. You got any questions for
What would
me?
you like to ask him?
I bring down a scooter.
He brought down a scooter. Do you have a scooter, Mark?
Yep.
I don't have a scooter. Should I get one?
Do you? He doesn't have a scooter. Should he get one?
I need a scooter consultant. Obviously, I may talk to you after the
Do you
show.
know that Mark is the best mandolin player I know? He's very good. So, all right. Well,
I must be the only one you
can you
know.
scoot into the other one for a minute?
Okay.
So this is work from home
Hey,
stuff. So
always love a surprise special
there
guest.
you go.
Okay.
All right. So let me finish on the webinar, and then we'll get back to some stuff I wanted to ask you about, just what you're doing
Sure.
in the industry. So core web
Mhm.
vitals are this, like, the hot topic right now, I think, in SEO. You touch on it. I don't think it's not going to be enforced, I think, till May, unless something has
Yeah.
changed. So perhaps, but you did have one insight that I thought was interesting. You say it might not be this massive game changer that some on SEO Twitter have predicted, but you do think it could be a tiebreaker. You use that word tiebreaker. In what ways could core web vitals be a tiebreaker?
So and I don't want to be too literal
Yeah.
about that, but I think it's a useful metaphor for these kinds of changes and updates. Uh, I, like some others in the past, like mobile friendly things like this. I don't think it's necessarily, at least for now, a make or break or a top line. Like if we can think of what happens within a ranking algorithm when uh, when somebody enters a query, I think of it kind of like a decision tree that happens, that goes on.
Mhm.
There's a sorting that happens, that the algorithm is actually a collection of algorithms, that there's a big algorithm that decides what parts of this apply best to this query and to what degrees and what weights. So user experience is something that Google wants to have more and more incorporated because it affects user satisfaction. Google knows that when somebody clicks through from a result, if they have a bad experience, even subconsciously, that reflects back on Google. People
Yeah.
are maybe less likely to use Google the next time, right? So that's why they care about this stuff. So uh, the primary, my sense from everything I've heard from Google representatives and the chatter I've had, is that the things that always mattered most, matching up relevancy with the most authoritative content that you can give the user, that's not going to
Mm.
change. You got to have that. That's number one. But then when I say a tiebreaker, it's kind of like all other things being
Right.
equal, which all other things are never equal, but theoretically, you have two, and John Mueller's even said this recently, they see two pages that are pretty much just as good as
Right.
each other, for a particular query. Like they're both great content, authoritative, trustworthy site, everything else that they might care about. At the end of the day, with Core Web Vitals, if A is giving a better user experience, it loads better, loads faster, easier to use, you get right to the content, all the things that matter in their page experience estimates, then it's going to get the nudge over the other one. I think that's how it's going to fall out. So it's kind of what my old boss, Eric Enge, used to call table stakes. You should be paying attention to it, not because it's going to get you to number one by itself, but because if you want to stay in the game and be competitive, you've got to be doing it better than your competition.
Oh, it's awesome. Well, you brought him up, but Eric, before I knew you in person, I used to watch your video series, the Here's Why video series, I think it was called, with you and Eric, and you guys would like dress up like you were going to, the the gladiators or something like that, and it was very entertaining. And you guys had a great chemistry between the two of you on it. Any chance you and Eric will be doing a video series at some point in the near future?
Oh my gosh, this is going to be, if Eric sees this, he's going to think that I planted this question in advance. We just like a week and a half ago recorded our first joint episode, because Eric still does Here's Why. It's not quite the same style that it used to be, but still does the show on a regular basis. So yeah, we did our first joint Here's Why in a couple of years, and it'll be coming out soon. So we'll keep you posted on that. That's amazing.
Wow, I didn't even have I had the scoop. So all right, well let me go through this. This is everyone's favorite part of the show. This is where Greg gives me a question to ask the guest, but he gives me no context. So I don't know exactly what any of this means. And it's kind of a high wire X for both of us.
The guest has no context.
That's right. Yeah. So he has two questions for you. The first one is lavender martini. Does that ring a bell at all?
It rings. It rings the Westminster chimes. Oh my God. Yeah, that's like, I don't remember what year it was, but a number of years ago, SMX West in San Jose was out late at night at the hotel bar, as we are wont to do at these conferences, and it was I think shortly after I'd just come out to some people in the industry as being part of the LGBTQ community, So you get then known as the gay guy who has the girls all want to be around you. And that's when you get the girls. Let me tell you, like, as soon as you say you're gay, that's when the girls come out. So the ladies who were with me at night, like they wanted to celebrate by buying me this lavender martini. And there was a kind of classic photo that was taken that was turned into by Ryan Jones into like 100 different memes of me looking very seriously over the top of this ridiculous lavender martini and sipping it.
Well, I have a feeling there's going to be one more meme in the intro to this video, so that's great. The other question he had for you, I might know this one. So it's 2 words: hammer dinners.
Oh, epic. Yes. The hammer, and that refers to Steve Hammer, and also gives us a good throwback to Eric Enge and Mr. Greg Gifford. There were a group of us that back in those days when we did these things in person, if we all found ourselves at a conference together, we would at least one night try to go out to one of the best restaurants in town and just have a real food and wine experience. And Steve Hammer, digital marketer and good friend of ours from Dallas, right? I think he's from Dallas, Texas. Yeah. Would often be the progenitor of that. Like he's such a gourmand. He knows every city. He knows the restaurants, and he would find some new, great hot restaurant that we had to explore. But the real fun of the evening was what we call wine tennis, which, we all got to benefit from because both he and Eric are really, really knowledgeable wine guys. And so they would just go back and forth throughout the evening trying to outdo each other in, ordering bottles of wine, and we just sit there and drink it. It was the best thing in the world.
This sounds fantastic. We've got to get conferences back, don't we, Mark? I mean, this sounds so great.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm starving.
Well, fantastic. I'm going to link to the webinar we've been discussing, but I would just say you're putting out webinars with some frequency. I know, and I would encourage anybody to stay up to date. Whenever Mark has one of those come out, I learn a lot every time I watch them, and they're extremely well done. Everybody at seoClarity does a really good job. How can people get in touch with you, Mark, if they'd like to?
Best way is always Twitter. I'm always, present on Twitter every day. It's just my name, Mark Traphagen, at Mark Traphagen. Real easy to find. Certainly through, mtraphagen at seoclarity.net. But yeah, Twitter's always great and easy. Love to hear from anybody there.
All right. Well, fantastic. Mark, thank you so much for coming on. I hope we can catch a Cubs game or eat a steak sometime in 2021, maybe. See, these vaccines are rolling out, so hopefully it won't be too much longer. And in the meantime, you're immense for coming on, so thank you very much.
You guys are terrific. I love you. I love what you do. So appreciate you in the industry, and the chance to get to know you better in the future will be something I will very much treasure. So thanks for having me on. This was a ton of fun.
All right.
And I got to drink beer in the middle of the day.
Well, let's leave it there. I'll leave you with a virtual cheers, Mark, and tune in next week for Suds Search. Thanks, everyone.